Greenfield is lower than what we see the other towns at, and Northampton is an outlier. So I think it's important not to pick an outlier. The last piece is that we have 13 counselors, and I think the original intent of the charter played with that large number because a lot of people who wanted to keep town meeting were really concerned about going to a small number of people. So the compromise to try to win over some of the votes was 5 districts with 2 each plus 3 at large. That's a relatively large council. And the reason where Northampton has 9, just for comparison. So everything we do has a bigger impact because we have a large council. And I don't believe we can change that until we go through a charter review. I'm not even sure the mid 10-year charter review can change the number of counselors. It cannot. So I shouldn't say we're stuck with, we have 13. So every time we take a number, it gets multiplied times 13 people. And Sean showed us the impact of 5. I mean, it's pretty easy to figure out what the impact is by doing, is it 1, 2, something in between, not all the way. So I am concerned about the total increase. I do think we can and should strongly recommend a way of looking at this going forward. So this is not the only time we visit this. And I like Northampton's. I'm not sure we need a standing committee, which is what they have. I think we could do an ad hoc committee, or we could go to percentages. And so I see the increase we're talking about now is a step forward, not necessarily an ending place. And I would like to hear that come back. So those are all just pieces of information, because what most of Lynn's chart is to say, if we just keep assuming president is always $2,500 more than wherever the counselors are. So I'm not even saying that there should be a decrease in that, but if we're looking at the comparisons, I have no idea where the Charter Commission came up with the 2,500. I think they were thinking that the first multiple years of the council were going to be a bear, and the president would have an extraordinary amount of time just to help get us organized. And that certainly has been true. I'm finished.
Alicia? Alicia, did you have something? Michelle? Go ahead.
Sure, I can jump in until Alicia's back.
Yeah, because I think we lost her actually.
Oh, does look that way, yeah.
No, she's here.
Okay.
Oh.
I was just gonna ask, and I'm sorry if I missed something previously, but per the charter, isn't it true that we have to make any compensation decisions by that July date? I'm not sure Kathy, what you're referring to in terms of continuing to look at it and increase it. How would that be possible?
What others are saying, Michelle, is that we could make an increase now. Yes, and we need to do that now. We could also recommend a process. And once the new council is seated, it's up to a certain amount. This could be, again, not wait another 5 years or another 6 years before we make another. They could come up with a way of going. So what I'm saying is, if we got to, say we went up by $2,000 now, we could, in another 18 months, look at another increment without the council itself making that decision, or with a recommendation from an ad hoc committee that said, have it increase at the same rate as the union contracts once we reach such and such a level. So I'm saying we can do something now, and it's not the last time. It would be the last time to do anything for the next council. for the up.
Okay,
Okay,
thanks for clarifying that. Yep.
So I guess that I'm still at that place where I was, that it seems like when we go to adding $65,000 of cost plus whatever employee taxation that town is liable for that gets added to that, it is going to have a substantial impact on our ability to add even one additional position for any of the things that I've mentioned previously. I have been toying with a lot with the question as to whether something in between is more consistent with the bulk of the other towns that were on that chart, not trying to get the outliers high or low, including our $5,000 current as being low or among the low, but not feeling that competing to get to the high end is something that feels comfortable for me to do. And but I do hear the rest of you, and I realize that it's a difficult decision that we're all struggling with. The question is there a number that we can recommend to the council, because we know that the council is going to have this discussion on its own. So we're sort of in some ways going to preview and inform a discussion, but we're not going to be the final, or should we be? So I guess that's where I am, is that I don't feel that there's a need to take us to go to the highest just for the sake of our matching the highest for lots of different reasons that I've stated already. But I do feel like something more than a minimum is also desirable. I really am looking myself for something in the middle, but ultimately this is going to be a group decision. So just to keep moving it around, because I'm going to go with Bob and then Alicia. Bob?
Yeah, is there a reason that we have to come up with a final number now, since the council is going to debate this? I mean, it really seems to me that this is really a council decision and not a finance committee decision. And so I would be comfortable saying we should, we agree that the stipend should be increased. We think the increase should be between X and Y, and let the council make a final decision on that. Because I don't see how our number is going to limit the council in any way in terms of the council's decision. And since we're sort of torn between this, I think it might actually be helpful to the council to see that we're not, we may not be able to agree on a number. So that's my thought.
Alicia?
Thank you, Andy. So I actually agree with Bob, but that was not what I was going to say, but I just wanted to offer that I wouldn't be opposed to just saying this is what our discussion was and leaving it to the full council. But I just also wanted to say I'm not sure why we're saying Northampton is an outlier, because it's not. It was not the lowest, nor was it the highest on the grid. It was the next step up above what our current one is. There's a 6,000, but if you look at the population for those towns, that was another factor that we considered. So the towns that have smaller stipends have a significantly smaller population in their town. So Northampton really is not an outlier at all.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Do you want to put that up again, Lynn? Because I think that there was an $8,000 in there.
There's an
6,000
8,
was East Hampton, I believe.
Yes, East Hampton and Pittsfield were lower, but again, they have much smaller population sizes. I
I'm not
would
sure that
say,
that's true, actually, on either one. So let's look.
yeah, East Hampton is 16, which is about like half, a little less than half. Pittsfield is larger. Yeah, and if you look at Agawam and Northampton, they're both also close-ish. They're still lower than our population type, but their stipends are higher. So I'm just saying, I don't see why we're calling Northampton an outlier because it's literally not.
it's an outlier to where they're going, Alicia. Or what it was recommended. We don't
Yeah,
know.
we don't know what Northampton's going to do, just so everybody realizes the Northampton Council, I think this is on their agenda for next week on Thursday. So the council hasn't had the discussion yet.
Lynn has her hand up.
Lynn, your hands up.
I actually would prefer that the council make a motion, and I'd like to propose an option. I mean, that the finance committee make a motion, and I'd like to propose an option.
Are you
Michelle
making
has
a
her
motion
hand
now?
up, though. Yes.
Well, if you're making a motion,
Okay, that we increase the stipend by 2,500 and we reduce the president's stipend by 500. So this would become 500. And so this is a minus 500. Actually, it's a minus 2,500. $25, 250. And here it's a minus 5.
okay. Is there a second? I'm going to go ahead and second because I just want to make sure that has happened in council meetings when Lynn is seconded, just to get things on the table for discussion.
So, Lynn, can I just clarify? So the present increment would be 2,000 instead of 2,500?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is what counselors would make when they get the full amount. This is what the president would make when they get the full amount. Right here.
In the additional compensation, just on its own basis is 32.5.
Mhm. So the total impact on our budget for the first year in FY24, which we would be asking the town manager to provide a supplemental budget for, would be for 16,000, and in FY25 it would be 32,000. Michelle has her
Do
hand
you
up.
want to speak to your motion before, or shall I go ahead and recognize it?
I've been trying to listen to what people have been saying, and I'm trying to find a compromise that, in my mind, fits with not having significant impact, fits with the fact that supposedly we're a mature council and the job of being president shouldn't be as heavy a lift. And I'm also trying to come to, and also take into consideration that we have an additional pilot amount of money in the budget already of 5,000 for family care. So that any one counselor at this point might might need that. And that means that their compensation covering family care and other things would be up to 12,500. If one counselor took all 5,000 of it.
Shell.
Understanding that I'm not a member of the finance committee, I was heading in the direction that Bob suggested, in thinking that a motion that would essentially say to the council, we've had this discussion, we think that some number between 7,500 and 10,000 is reasonable, and we want the council to figure out what that number is, because I guess my concern is if we come out of, or if the finance committee comes out of here with a split vote, how does that impact the discussion at the council level? How does, if a motion is passed here, does that motion then be the motion that comes to the table at council? And then, you know, if people want to change it, they have to amend it. And all that's fine, you know, that's part of what we do, but I was just thinking through the various pathways that this might come. If it comes out with a unanimous vote, how is that different than if it comes out as a split vote? And I was thinking very much along the same lines as Bob.
I guess the one advantage, and you've kind of touched on it now, just, and then I'm going to ask for Matt, whose hands have been up and down a couple times, and then Kathy. There is an advantage to having a starting point, the discussion, because otherwise we're going to end up at a council meeting with uncertainty as to what the starting point is for the discussion. In some ways, that is one advantage to having a number come out of this committee recommendation, is it makes it easy to then justify it and to make it the motion that starts the discussion. But anyway, Matt.
Thanks, Andy. And I think also to that point, you know, this is a matter that has a financial impact on the town. And I think it's our responsibility to look at the financial impact. And I think there's a really, really complicated political frame to this, in terms of, you know, council making this recommendation versus a neutral party like in Northampton or other places. That's beyond the scope of finance. I don't think that's our job to look at that, but I do think that it's our job to look at financial impact, even if we, you know, look at multiple potential motions and their impacts. I still think we should take a position on that and make a recommendation to the council specific to a number or a couple numbers. And with that being said, I think, you know, the fact that we've had other elected bodies other than council in this discussion already, you know, we do need to look at the full impact of other committees as well as town council if we're talking about raising stipends.
Kathy?
If the motion's been made and seconded, and I'd like to vote on it, I think split votes are very often helpful. I don't think it's helpful to have everything come out of committee as unanimous, or the other way I could call it is a punt, that because we couldn't agree, we're throwing it up higher. I think this is reasonable for multiple reasons. It's a substantial increase from where we are now. There is, Lynn had another part to what she was talking about, where we put the current budget has $5,000 in it for family support, and talking about having another part of a motion be, we want to review that and see how it has worked for the first quarter, for the first half a year, so we can really see whether that should be increased to make it possible for people to have higher caregivers. So I think this is a good starting point. I also think it minimizes, in terms of the arguments on why we might have a split vote and want to go here rather than just jump up. It minimizes the FY24 impact by quite a bit by not going all the way up. And I think we should have, when I said we should have, I want to vote on this. I also want to vote on the family support motion, and I want to make it clear to the council that we think there should be a process. So we don't wait another 5 years, that we want to have something set up to say, what can we do, that we want to revisit this. So this isn't the only time we're looking at it. It's the only time we're looking at for FY24, but that we want to come back to it. So I would like to take a vote on this. I think it's important that we don't just leave the discussion wide open for 13 people.
Alicia?
Thank you, Andy. I have a couple of thoughts. One, I don't know if I agree that a split vote is more helpful, because we can also submit like the memo with the summary that explains our conversation, which I think would be equally as helpful. Just understanding that we've talked about these numbers and this is our frame, because we also do have a pretty clear frame. Like if no one's willing to go above a $5,000 increase anyways, we're recommending between $0 and $5,000 increase essentially. So I don't think it leaves it wide open for the council to do whatever, but also even if we send a $5,000 increase and the council wants to give more, they can do that. So I don't think it's necessarily an issue to have no conclusion at the end of this meeting and to send what our discussion has been and what we've talked about, because I think there's a lot of great points here that the council will want to know about, that we send that over to the council. So that's one of my thoughts. And my other thought is about the childcare. And I think thinking about it like an addition to the stipend is the wrong way to think about it, because it's not like where they would have the 7,000 plus the 5,000, because they would have to use money to pay for childcare first in order to be reimbursed. And so that's the issue. And I'm not going to fight that issue right now, but that's the issue I have with reimbursement, is that assumes that people already have the money to pay for the childcare up front. And so I would rather you just give every counselor an extra 5,000 to pay for the childcare up front than to say you need to find a way to pay for it first and then we will reimburse it because we're going to give you a smaller stipend. That's actually still not helpful, not as inclusive, and is not going to diversify the council in the way that I intended with this motion. So I am not going to be in favor of this, but I also do really appreciate Lynn's listening and trying to find a compromise, because I do see why you would think of this as a compromise. But again, as somebody who is low income and has a family and has all of these things, I can tell you right now, it is not going to be enough of an impact for families like me to be able to run for council. Thank you.
Yes, I have one observation, which you're welcome to respond to, Alicia, because this is a conversation, but for all of the counselors, which obviously is myself included, who don't have family care responsibilities presently, the increase in compensation is irrelevant to the question of assisting in any increase or any ability to access the child care to get reimbursement, assuming it's totally on a reimbursement basis. So why does it, why would that be the most helpful way to use the dollars? It's like, it's not giving me the money isn't going to help you meet that initial threshold. Kathy?
I'd like to call the question to take a vote on the motion on the floor.
There's been somebody's called the question. Is there anybody who wants to speak? Otherwise, there's no need to take a vote. Otherwise, I'm going to take a vote on calling the question. Seeing no other hands go up.
Second,
Okay, now there's a motion that's been made and seconded on calling the question, so we will treat it as a motion. And it is one that we vote on immediately. So we'll start one down from the first, and this one, Lynn,
aye.
question. Bob,
I'll support this.
support calling the question. Matt, this is on calling the question.
I understand. I don't support calling the question because I do think we should establish whether we're making additional recommendations beyond only counselor compensation before we act on this.
Bernie's absent. Kathy,
Yes,
I'll vote yes. Alicia,
No.
and Anna.
Aye.
So let's see how we do this now. May have to. We had 4 yes on calling the question, which it was in 1 no, and
You needed 2/3 and you have it.
so we have met 2/3. So therefore we have called the question. So the motion on the floor is Lynn's motion to increase the debt fund for counselors by $2,500 and decrease the president by $500. That is the motion.
decrease the president's increment by 20.
Yes, increment. Thank you for the clarification point. Bob,
Support.
Matt,
Support.
Bernie, of course, is absent. Kathy,
Yes,
I will vote yes. Alicia, Alicia with us?
No.
Alicia voted no. Anna
Yes, but I believe it should be higher and plan on advocating such at the council.
and Lynn.
Aye.
So it's 4-1, 2 resident members in support. So we do have an amount that we're putting forward. And we had the note on a stated the obvious, so no need to repeat that. That's not part of the motion. So Lynn, back to you. You had additional motions. Is there a next motion that you think is appropriate in order?
Yeah, let me just, I want to just for the moment show the motions that are in here. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I'm going to share draft motions. So the first one, the second one is what I've just done, and that's the way the motion for the council would need to read. And then, of course, that can be amended. Okay.
So Yeah, I wish you had put that out first, only because it makes it very strange to having not voted on the exact wording.
Yeah, I'm
Those.
sorry about that.
I think, Andy, it's close enough,
Why
to
don't
what
we do it this way? If anybody from the committee objects, then please say so. Otherwise, we will treat the motion to be that in accordance with Charter Section 2.4 to adopt and increase the increases the amount that we just voted, and total compensation of 7,500, decrease present by 500. That's all. So it's entirely consistent with what we just voted. The other thing that is a necessary part of this would be a necessary part of any motion, which is to we're also request the town manager to submit a supplemental budget to meet the increase in accordance with the section 5.6 of the charter, which is budget amendments. So it's in effect exactly the same motion. So if there's no objection, Bob?
Yeah, I would just take the 50% out of that. I don't think it's necessary, and I think, as other people have said, it could be viewed as prejudicial.
I agree.
Okay. So again, if there is no objection, we will make that the wording of the motion, since the numbers are exactly the same and it just spells out the process a little bit more clearly. Okay, Lynn, back to you.
So I'd like to make a next motion, and that is the Finance Committee recommends the town council view the inclusion of the family care item in the town budget for FY24 as a pilot program beginning July 1st, 2023, and for the Finance Committee to review use of family care reimbursements on a quarterly basis.
Is there a second to the motion?
Shane seconds, and I also have a comment.
Okay, you want to speak to the motion first, or do you want to let Kathy speak first? Lynn, you made the motion.
No, I'm just trying to set up a situation where we don't just leave it in the budget and then don't follow through. I want to see what happens to it. And it may be that we need to increase it during the year, or definitely increase it as we go into the next year. But I also want to be very clear. I personally do not want to know who is receiving these additional funds. I think that's personal, and I don't believe that's the business of the council.
Kathy?
Yeah, my only comment, I'm fine with the wording of this. I think it's possible, but Paul and Sean would have to tell us if it's possible. At one other place I worked, which was not a government, it was private. If you knew you were going to need help with childcare or help with transportation, they did in advance that you drew on. So you wouldn't be what Alicia described as pay first and then go later. So I'd like, or if that's possible, so we'd have to set up a process to be able to do that. So I don't want to put it in the form of a motion. I'm saying it verbally because I have no idea how complicated or simple it might be to do something like that.
I totally agree with that.
If Holly's here, she might be able to answer that question better, but I don't believe we can do that. We usually have to pay bills after service is rendered or after we've received a product that we're paying for.
Yeah, just echoing what Athena said, we don't prepay. We don't. I'm trying to think of if there's any mechanisms like that we have in place, and I can't think of any. Holly, are you aware of anything?
No, Mass General Law is pretty specific on prepayments being disallowed, except like for subscription type things.
That was helpful, quick feedback. Thank you all very much. So much for private sector can do it. And as I said, it was only one place where I worked that knew it was a problem for some people, and it wasn't for all employees. Yeah.
And I think that and I'm assuming, I just want to clarify that thought is that by having regular quarterly reviews, that if the money is being spent at a faster rate than it would work for the amount that was budgeted to be annualized, that it would allow then for a supplemental budget request or some other mechanism, a transfer within. Alicia?
Thank you. My question is similar to Kathy's in that I'm wondering more about process. So I support this motion. I'm just wondering if we have a process or parameters that indicate things like what activities are reimbursable. Like, is it just being on a literal meeting, or is it reimbursable to be meeting with constituents? Is it reimbursable to be doing writing motions and having somebody watch your kids? So like, what activities are covered, or to like be going to community events or going to council readings of proclamations, like which things are covered under the reimbursement? And is there like a limit? Because I think I've said this before, but we have $5,000 stipends, and I have overspent my stipends paying for childcare. Like, I've come out of pocket over that. So I'm wondering if we have a limit to how much each counselor could access from the fund. And if we don't, who would determine those things?
I can speak to that a little bit, and I don't know if Paul's still here. I think for this first year for the pilot, I think our expectation was it would be for meetings. And in terms of the limit, it would be up to the amount that's budgeted. So we weren't sort of allocating it on a per counselor basis. So it would sort of be first come, first serve, and it would be for public meetings.
And what would be the possibility that if we did a quarterly review and we found that the amount being claimed is going to only take part of the year, what would be the process that you might be able to consider to supplement the amount?
Do you mean increase the amount or expand the scope of what it?
Well, increase the amount
for meeting coverage.
Increase the amount that's available. The thing about a quarterly is that if it turns out that the amount is expended after 3 or 6 months, what is the mechanism, if any, to make it a year-round program?
I think we would look at a couple of things. We would ultimately be up to the town manager to look at the budget that we have. If there's funds that have been freed up somewhere else, we might be able to shift it over. If there's not, we would discontinue the program at that point. Again, that's why we're treating this as a pilot, so that we can evaluate how it goes this first year and then make adjustments to it for the following year. So again, depending on how it goes the first year, there might be some ability to shift some things around, especially if there's savings within the council's budget itself. But we won't know that until we go through it.
Alicia?
Thank you, Sean. That's very helpful. I'm just wondering if you could maybe write up those parameters for when we discuss with the council, like
Sure.
how we think these funds will be used. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, we can do that. And we can also, we can kind of give our thoughts on the mechanism by which the whole process will work. So that's kind of clear in terms of the, I think one of the goals for this was to make the reimbursement mechanism as straightforward as possible, so we can try to put that to paper as well.
So you had put forward, I believe, Lynn, this is a motion, which I think seconded by Kathy. So is there any further discussion on the motion? Kathy, are you waving your hand, or you around your mouse, or you?
No, I was just literally, the only way I can see if anyone raised their hand is to click a button. No, I wasn't raising my hand.
Okay, I don't see anybody's hands up. So we have a motion that's been made and seconded. We've had discussion. I see no further discussion having been requested. And so I'll start with Matt.
Yeah, I support this. Support.
Bernie is absent. Kathy?
Yes,
I'm a yes. Alicia?
Yes,
Lana?
Aye.
Lynn?
Aye.
And Bob?
I support.
So we have, this is unanimous 5-0 with support from 2 resident members. And with another motion here.
Yes, the finance committee recommends to the town council that they make no changes in health insurance coverage for elected officials.
Your second?
James. Kathy
James,
James.
second. Yeah, this motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? To start is, do you want to, is the maker of the motion, Lynn, you're entitled to go first.
It's just, this was the consensus of the discussion last time. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it.
Okay. Kathy, anything else?
Nope.
Anybody else want to raise any questions? So this is about insurance, the last one, just to taking notes. Okay, so Kathy?
Yes,
I'm a yes. Alicia?
yes,
Anna?
Aye.
Lynn?
Aye.
Bob?
Support.
And Matt?
Support.
So it's unanimous with and the support of 2 members who are resident members, 1 resident member absent. Are there further motions?
Andy, I actually would like to raise 2 other issues, and since they were in the packet, I'll just show them, okay?
Okay,
One of the things that's interesting, and the charter, frankly, is a little murky on this, and that is how we would give school committee members compensation. My initial thought was they now receive $3,000 a year, would be to raise it to 4, and to raise the compensation for the chair from 4 to 5. In addition to that, the charter is completely silent on reimbursing the trustees of the Jones Library. And so I don't feel as strongly about that, although I'm hoping that a future commission or whatever will address that. But I do really feel that we should be looking at the following motion. And let me just put it as a motion, and then we can decide whether we're going to go forward. The Finance Committee recommends the Town Council, in accordance with Charter Section 4.1D, to adopt an increase for the school committee members' compensation in the amount of $1,000 for a total annual compensation of $4,000 for school committee members and $5,000 for the school committee chair, effective January 2nd, 2024, and to request the town manager submit a supplemental budget appropriation to meet an increase in accordance with Charter Section 5.6.
is there a second? Having not heard a second, then the motion has not been seconded. And it can't go forward at this time. I do want to make one comment, however, as to why I didn't second it. And that is that 4.1D is an entirely different process than section 4.2, under which, or 2.4 rather, under which we're working for the finance, or for the council increase. The requirement in that is that there's a process that says that it is a budget issue and not subject to the time limitations. And therefore, a motion can be made at a later point, and it can be considered as a budget amendment, which is actually what this section provides. So I think that it's important to understand that there is a difference between how the charter treats the process for council and how the charter treats the process for all other elected officials. And that was why I put the sections that are relevant to the budget up from the charter into the packet as one of those last minute adds, so that if we don't end up discussing it further right now, you know that you can very easily find the sections that relate to all compensation matters, on a single page. And that was to sort of assist you in going through this, but this is a different process, and it is not time driven in the way that council compensation is. Kathy?
And Andy, I think by budget amendment, you mean supplemental appropriation, right?
Yes, you're right. Supplemental appropriation. I guess I was amending budget, but you're right. The proper term is supplemental appropriation.
Kathy has her hand up.
Kathy?
Yeah, Andy, I agree with what you just said, and I don't know whether we just also voted on library, but I think we're raising two completely different issues here, and they're different from each other, and they're different than the what was put before us, and I don't think that's appropriate. It certainly wasn't on an agenda. The library is a private entity. It's not even town government, although we elect them. So I just think it's a whole different issue, and now is not the time to be raising this. So that was just my comment about it. I think we should stay to what's before us.
What I'm going to say is not intended to as a point of disagreement, but the charter is very clear that these are elected officials, and that the council can, or that there is a process for any elected official to be compensated. And when you start looking at those sections that I referred to, in the transition portion of the charter commission put in an initial amount for school committee, did not put in an initial amount for library trustees. But I think as you look at those charter sections, it's clear that it is an elected office, and therefore one that is encompassed and was intended to be encompassed.
My point was just, this is not on today's agenda. We're under the gun to get something back. It's a different issue. I completely agree they're elected officials, but I think it opens up a very different conversation. So I would prefer it just be removed from there. If someone wants to bring it later, that's fine with me, but the counselor compensation that Elisha and Michelle brought was because it could only happen within a certain time span. So that's my concern with both of these. And we've just been talking for, it's 2.5 hours. So I think we should do what was on the agenda.
Yeah. The school committee one, there was a motion and there was not a second to the motion, so that it died on failure of second to the motion. And so I think that we have taken care of all of the issues. Anything else, Kathy? Otherwise, I'm going to call in Alicia.
No, I'll take my hand down. Sorry.
Alicia?
And I know Kathy just said this, but I just wanted to confirm that there is not a time constraint on the raising of stipends for school committee.
The school committee, in the end, it would have to be that essentially we would request a supplemental budget, and it would be up to the town manager to decide to honor that request by including a supplemental budget, making a supplemental budget request, but it's not time limited. It could happen at any time.
And for the library trustees, that would need to come in as part of the regular budget. It couldn't be a supplemental budget because the compensation hasn't been set for the library trustees yet.
So noted. Is there anything else, Alicia? Otherwise, I'll call on Matt and then we can move forward.
Just really quickly, because I don't know if I'm just still confused or if that didn't exactly answer my question, but maybe a better way to ask it would be, is there still time if we don't discuss this today to discuss this again and have it go in effect for the next term for school committee and library trustees?
I think the answer that you just got from Athena does answer it, is that it's not too late for school committee. It is too late for library trustees. Library trustees would have to wait. And it's complicated because the way that that one section that is relevant to this is covered. There's two different things. One is setting an additional amount, and the other is amending the amount. Because there's an amount already for the school committee, it can be amended. Because there's no amount for the library trustees, it cannot be amended. There's nothing to increase or decrease. So the library trustees would have to wait until the next year's budget anyway. Sean, do you have anything to add on that?
I was just going to try to add to Alicia's question, the 18-month requirement that it happened within 18 months and it kicks in the following term. That wording seems to apply specifically to town councilors. When you look at the charter, it references town councilors specifically, and that same language doesn't appear in the school committee section. So hopefully that answers that.
Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I guess I will say that I'm a little disappointed that we're at this position right now. You know, I think everybody here, you know, including Alicia and Michelle, who did all the research initially, you know, agrees that a non-biased sort of independent review of stipends around the region would be the most appropriate way to set an increase and determine a rate for increase. And I was persuaded, I still am persuaded, that there is an urgency in doing an increase now to, you know, to help to start to equalize compensation and stipends for counselors. So, and I certainly don't agree that school committee and others were not on the agenda for this. I mean, this draft motion was posted and it was discussed at length at the previous meeting. I thought personally, I thought that the inclusion of at least school committee, if not trustees as well, would help ameliorate some of the, you know, some of the potential claims that this is not a completely appropriate recommendation for the sitting group to make, is to increase their own stipends. But so I suppose setting aside another elected body's stipend while taking emergency action on the council's own stipend, in my mind, is not an appropriate way to approach this. And again, you know, as a finance committee, it's why I didn't want to call the question quite so quickly earlier, is because I think we need to look, our job is to look at the fiscal impact of all of these things. And we didn't even take the time to look at the fiscal impact of Lynn's proposal for school committee. So I have to say that this is kind of surprising to me. I didn't think that this group would move in this direction. And of course, I will, I'm only a resident member and I'm not going to, I don't really have any recourse, but I will say that this is a disappointment.
Andy?
Yes. Lynn.
So I just want to make sure, and Alicia's asked these questions, and I just want to make sure I've heard them the same way. The issue of raising school committee stipends for the upcoming term could still happen after July 2nd, but it would have to happen through a budget supplemental. That's what I've heard. However, compensation for the Jones Library trustees could not happen in the same way because they don't already receive a stipend. Am I correct in both of those statements?
Yes.
Okay. So for the purposes of this meeting, then I'm going to suggest we take this off the table, and at some point in the near future, it might be brought back to the council and referred to the finance committee.
Alicia?
So I'm in agreement with Lynn's suggestion. I would just hope that we might be able to bring this back at like our next meeting or the soonest meeting, because I think in the same way that it would be important for people who are looking to run for council to know, I think it would be the same for school committee. And so I know that we're coming up close to like election time and pulling papers. And so I would like to have that discussion sooner rather than later.
Got it. Andy, if unless other people have comments, I have one other final motion, and it's the one I've highlighted.
I'm going to read it and explain it, and then to see
Yeah.
if somebody seconded it.
The Finance Committee recommends that the Town Council send a letter to the 2024 Charter Commission supporting changes in sections 2.4 and 4.1D regarding council, school committee, and Jones Library trustee compensation, and consider a method for implementing future base stipends and increases for elected officials in the town of Amherst. That's my motion. If it's seconded, I'll then speak to it.
Your second?
I'll second Walker.
Okay.
So in FY24, in fact, even before FY24, I will be bringing to the council a draft charge for a 2024 Charter Commission review committee. That review committee is appointed by the council. It is required by the charter in every year ending in 4 that there be a charter review. And this would be one of probably several suggestions and or issues that this council or the next council may want to bring to the attention of the Charter Review Committee. And my reason for wanting to put this up now is so we don't lose sight of it.
Yeah, I'm going to speak to it from the sake of information purposes. We've had a lot of discussion about Northampton having a commission that has looked and being required to do that every 10 years. And what I learned subsequently is that that was not an initial provision that Northampton had, that when they also have a part of their charter that requires that there be a charter review every 10 years. During the last charter review process, the question arose, and the proposal from that group, that commission, or whatever they called it in Northampton, was to recommend that there be this at least once every 10-year compensation review process that was what this whole thing in Northampton is about. But it arose out of the equivalent of our 2024 process and it was about 10 years ago. Kathy?
I'm completely for this, and I think it's been written in a way that says consider a method, of which there are many. And I think Andy said at the beginning, I need to leave the meeting before it's over. So I don't know how much discussion we're going to have on this, but I would be voting for it.
I don't know if there's any other discussion. Because if not, let's go ahead and vote. So I don't know if you'd want a few minutes with the quarterly report if possible. Let's see. Kathy Manche,
Yes.
first, you're yes. I will vote yes. Alicia? Alicia?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anna,
Aye.
Lynn,
Aye.
Matt,
Support.
and Bob,
Support.
and Bernie is absent. So it is unanimous 5-0 with 2 resident members in support, 1 resident member absent. I can't think of anything else that we need to do in compensation question at this meeting. Lynn, did you have any other motions?
Nope.
Having no other motions. I thank you. This has been a very difficult discussion. I will try by early next week to have a draft because this of our committee report, because I want to make sure that all of you have an opportunity to comment on this report. This is not going to be an easy one, and I therefore really value input and will endeavor to make sure that this one is on time to get meaningful input from the committee. We have 2 other things that we need to do. One is to have the third quarter report, and the other is about scheduling of meetings. And I don't know how we can do this very quickly on the scheduling of meetings. Alicia, if I understood what you said at the last time we met, that you're still for daytime meetings, Friday is the only day that's available, and that otherwise after 5:30. Did I understand that correctly?
That is correct. And I don't know if it particularly matters because I know Mondays we usually have council meetings, but I do get out at 3 on Mondays. So like a 3:30 on a Monday would also be an option.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and gonna just do this real quickly, at least to start. Matt, you had expressed at a prior meeting a reservation about 5:30 meetings. Is that still your a concern?
About avoiding standing 5:30 meetings?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I would, that's, I mean, that's dinner time for everybody, I think.
Andy, 3:30, if the finance committee didn't happen on the same Monday as the council, and we would work to not back us up.
Anna?
Yeah, I hate being the problem here. I work until either 4:30 or 5, and so it's pretty tough for me to flex that schedule to do 3:30 meetings. So it may be a couple weeks before I can make that happen to clear that time. I can try. I just got to name that it's pretty tough when technically my workday goes till 4:30 or 5. I can try to make it work. I may need a little bit of adjustment time I've got stuff on my schedule for Mondays for the next couple while. So I gotta adjust that.
Okay, just for the record, I don't expect that we're going to be meeting more than once a month for the next months, and that takes us through until we receive the initial information about projections for FY25, and we start having to think about next budget guidelines. Sean, is there anything you have to add?
No. In terms of other reasons we'd have to meet between now and then.
Yes.
No, I mean, we usually do the fourth quarter report in the fall. You know, there may be some things that will pop up from the council that would go to the finance committee, but nothing that's on my radar right now.
Yeah, we do have some outstanding referrals, but nothing major. Anna, is there anything more? Because otherwise, I
Nope,
would
nope,
suggest
sorry.
that you just let me know, and we'll come back to the committee by email if need be, since we can do that for this purpose.
So you want me to, so just to confirm what you'd like me to do, you'd like me to look at my calendar for 3:30 on non-council Mondays for the
Yes,
foreseeable future?
realizing we're talking about once a month for the until the end of the year.
Yep,
Revisit.
I'd also like
I
to
would-
point out that many of those Mondays are legal holidays that our staff don't work.
Yeah, so it may not work. Okay, so Friday may be our only viable time. Yeah.
So I have a question of Kathy. How often is the school building committee meeting on Friday morning?
We are meeting only once a month, and we just did that schedule in July and August. And that's an 8:30. It didn't even go till 10 this morning. We had a meeting this morning. So, and it's the next one is, Alicia was there. I think it's July 14th. And then the August one is whatever is a month later, if it's August 16th, whatever it is, but we only have once a month. So there wouldn't be a conflict for a morning Friday meeting, other than we have several people who work here that don't have
Alicia,
Fridays.
and could you do the other Fridays? Alicia, can you do the other Fridays? And how about you, Matt?
Sorry, say what
My
time?
Fridays are very, oh, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Just gonna say what time?
Friday in the morning.
Yeah, potentially.
Maybe we could poll for that, Andy. Anna has her hand up though.
Anna?
Yeah, I can do Fridays through the end of August, but then once again, I have that job thing. I think I just want to name that whatever we do pick, I would very strongly like to request and go to bat for keeping that consistent. I had cleared all of my Tuesdays for this meeting, and so I just got to name that it's pretty frustrating to have to consistently change around my work schedule for these meetings when I was told they were Tuesday afternoons after council meetings. And so whatever we pick, I really need us to stick to it, because I'm already pushing my luck here, and it's too hard to keep changing them up and keep needing to move things at my job. I don't know about Fridays after August, because again, like I need to prioritize the job that helps me pay my bills. So just got to name that this is a little frustrating. And I know that none of you are intentionally creating frustration. I wanted to make sure that people are clear that every time we change it, it's very hard. Thank you.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. I appreciate your cooperation. Sean, I think we have done as much as we can do, and can go on to having you and Holly present the third quarter report. I don't know. I think that Kathy may have to duck out quietly at some point.
I'll go quietly, but also just saying it was a great report, and I don't think I had any major questions, so I will miss your talking about it. I was glad to see it's basically, I think, a fairly good news report on the third quarter, but I won't steal your thunder, Holly. So enjoy your weekend, everyone. I am leaving. Thanks.
Hi, Kathy.
So, Sean? You and
Yeah,
Holly?
I'll turn it over to Holly Drake, our comptroller, who will walk us through sort of the highlights of the third quarter report. And then we can go over any questions you have.
Okay, and so I just realized that the third quarter report hasn't been posted to the website yet, but I will make sure that that happens today before I leave, because we
it is-
always make sure it is out there. Oh, it is?
It is in the packet, Holly. Do you
Oh,
want
it's
me
on
to
the packet, right? I
is it
usually
help-
put it on our website as well for
Yeah, I think
anybody in
it's
the
been in the
public
council
listening to be able to
package,
see it.
Is it helpful to everyone if I share the screen, or do you just want to listen? If everyone has in front of them, I don't have to share it. But
Now that's up to you. So, I
okay,
just
leave
wanted
it.
to say
I
that,
think sharing is always useful. Then we
It is
don't have
useful.
to be looking at two screens.
Okay, then I will share. Is it okay, Holly, if I share and I'll just kind of follow the
Yep.
scroll? Okay.
Yep. So, I just want to say, in general, things are looking tight, but they are looking good. On the revenue side, we are doing well. We will exceed our revenue budget estimates by year end. Just a few of the good reasons for that is the investment income between the rates we've been getting on CDs and the monthly bank account interest rate that has increased dramatically over the last couple of years, and we're doing well there.
Holly,
Other
can I say on that point for a second? And Holly, you can add to this too. We haven't seen interest rate revenue like this. I mean, when I started in 2010, I'd look back at history at investment income at the region, and I was always envious of how much they used to bring in, because we never got anything like that since 2010. And the numbers that you'll see this year, especially when we're done completely, significantly up. And we have increased in the FY24 budget. Hopefully, we'll continue to increase it. But this is the silver lining to interest rates going up. Some of our savings accounts are in the 4 or 5% range. And it comes at a time when we have a lot of money as well. We have lots of grants. We have the American Rescue Plan Act.
stabilization funds high.
Stabilization funds high. So all that money earns interest. And so we apportion it based on the fund. So some goes to the general fund, some goes MBLC money. We earn interest on that stays with the library project. So it all gets apportioned out. But I'll say this is probably one of the key highlights is how well investment income is doing. Yeah, go stop there.
Yeah, absolutely. I went from having to figure out how to put in 0.2 and 0.1% to going back up to 2s and 3s and 4%. It's great. So then other departmental income is doing well, mostly due to certificate of occupancy fees and police outside details. As you all see, as you drive around, there's a lot of road construction going on, and that creates more revenue for the towns in those police outside details that they are working on nonstop. Licenses and permits is up and above the average that it should be at this time of year, around 75%, due to building permits and rental registrations mostly. And then the other thing is in the miscellaneous non-recurring buckets, the opioid settlement monies were not budgeted, so that just gets added in. And then as well as the cannabis money, which we have not been budgeting at this point. So those things are just add to the higher percentage rates right now.
And on that one, Holly, just for everyone to know, so we are going to get opioid settlement payments for the next 20 to 25 years. The state attorney general negotiated settlements with several large pharmaceutical companies and sort of on behalf of all the cities and towns. And so there's a schedule. We know exactly how much we'll get. Unfortunately, when they did this, they didn't pass the legislation that allows us to earmark it or set it aside in a way that's helpful. So unfortunately, this is going to kind of be like the impact fees with cannabis, where we will receive it, it will fall to free cash, and then we will have to track it and appropriate it for eligible uses. There is some legislation and something we're looking at where maybe we can do something similar to what we just did with the cannabis impact fees, where we can get it out of free cash right away and put it into a special fund. Because we don't want to lose track of how much we have, because there's strings attached to how we spend this money, but we also don't want to inflate our reserves and make us think we have more there than we really have. So this year, I think we're going to get somewhere north of 100,000, because this year was the combination of a few years. But going forward, it's thinking the $20,000 to $30,000 range per year. And our health department, police department, EMS, they're all working on the best way to allocate these funds. But it has to be for opioid remediation and to deal with the impacts.
So then, on the expense side, it's been a bit of a tough year. Increases in costs, supply chain issues, inflation, utilities, especially electricity, have hurt many of our departments. Especially with the larger buildings, the enterprise funds. Water and sewer are hurting this year because of increases in electricity costs mostly, and just inflation in general. So many departments are probably going to end the year over budget, but there is savings other places that will be able to cover those departments that are over budget, due to some vacancies that we've had in certain departments, and the closeout of the health claims trust fund this year paid for a half a month of our premiums on health insurance. So there'll be some savings in the general fund due to some unspent insurance premiums. So, I mean, all in all, everything will be able to be covered. It's going to be tight, but it'll be able to be covered. But you will notice when the fourth quarter report comes out and final numbers come in that some departments have gone over. Many departments will have salary savings that will cover some of their overages in the operating budget side. We are making and have made some adjustments to the FY24 budget, especially for utilities in those departments that operate large buildings, to try to offset some of that in future years. And then the other thing that I did want to mention on the report as well is that here it looks like snow and ice has been overspent for the year, but that was due to the fact that we had a very large encumbrance. We, at the beginning of the season, put in a purchase order for what we think will be enough salt to cover for the entire year. And then when the winter season is over, we'll liquidate that. So snow and ice is actually, I think, currently got about $35,000 available remaining. So they are not overspent at year end. It was a fairly mild winter, thank God. That could have hurt us as well, but we were lucky there. And, again, with the enterprise funds, water and sewer are going to be pretty close. Their revenues are on track. They're hopefully going to make it. They're very close to meeting their revenue budgets, but their expenses are going to be even closer, and we are keeping track of that. We have a few what do I want to say? We have a few
strategies
right now to try and combat what's happening with them, and I think that in the end, we will make it work. And I guess that's all, unless folks have questions. Sean or I can certainly help you. I will add that to the accounting webpage here in just a few minutes.
Andy, Bob has his hand up.
Yep. Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, it's more a comment than anything, and maybe you could, Holly, you could elaborate on this a little bit, but the encumbrances are not necessarily going to be fully expensed in this fiscal year. Is that correct?
So what we typically are doing this time of year is we're going through the encumbrances, and things that are not going to be spent in this fiscal year will get closed out. So this is the time of year where a lot of the purchase orders will get closed out. So if and it's kind of hard to explain, but if you put in a purchase order for $10,000 and you only ended up spending $9,000 and there's still $1,000 left, it will show that has been spent in these types of reports. But what we'll do at year end is we'll go through those purchase orders and we'll close them out. But then we also will be putting in purchase orders for any bills that will be coming in the next couple of weeks, so that we can hold those monies to set it aside for next year. So the encumbrances will definitely go up and down throughout the fiscal year, but they will be for things, they have to be for things that were purchased within this fiscal year. And if they haven't been purchased within this fiscal year, they will be closed out, or they'll get closed out in a subsequent year, and then they go back in a subsequent year.
And there's a couple different types of encumbrances. So
That
some
makes
encumbrances
sense.
are for things we know exactly what the price will be. We do the purchase order. It's exactly matched up, and those are typically spent out. Some, like the snow and ice, are what we call sort of blanket purchase order. So they're things we anticipate spending. We want to reserve the money, so we don't give the appearance that there's a bunch of money there if we anticipate we're going to spend it. But then if we have a more mild winter, like we did this year, then we can liquidate some of those. So that's the case with the snow and ice one. But in most cases, the encumbrances are for specific invoices or purchases that it'll be spent completely.
Okay. Thank you.
And did we receive any written questions that you think?
Yeah, we addressed some of them. Bob sent some good questions in. He asked about the encumbrance issue, the snow and ice issue. He asked about a few departments that were trending higher, and I can quickly go over some of those. One of the departments trending higher was information services, 87%. And that one, the major driver there is that we pay for all our software at the beginning of the year. So that's sort of front loaded in terms of expenses. Registrations, again, this one might finish slightly over budget. It's higher. This is related to the census and when we send out confirmation cards and so on. We don't anticipate a lot more expenses this year, but it could be slightly over. Some of the facilities, so Bangs Community Center trending higher. We are seeing some of our facility areas higher because of utilities, as Holly mentioned. Here, it's one of the things that's impacting this is we filled a custodial position. Mary's old position was finally filled, but that position has been working at the Bangs Community Center, but the funding for it is in the town hall. But there was just an operational decision that it would be at the Bangs Community Center for now. So there's actually some savings that we'll see in the town hall budget that will offset some of the expense in the Bangs Community Center. But again, facility accounts in general, we're watching closely because of the utility impacts. Question about the childcare facilities, same sort of thing, trending higher. This one had some unusual equipment maintenance and building maintenance higher this year than in past years. So again, it might finish slightly over, but not significantly. And it's a relatively small account overall. General fund or general services is trending higher at 88%. There's a couple expenses there that are higher this year that we anticipate will drop in future years related to some projects. So one is our telephone project where we've swapped out our sort of landline phones and we've gone with digital phones, which are less expensive annually. But we're still sort of in that transition point where we're getting off of Verizon because we need to make sure that every single safety line, emergency line, we know exactly what it's for before we can completely cut it. So that one we expect this coming year will actually start to see a savings. And then the other one is the fiber network. We should be able to switch over to that fiber network any day now. I don't want to steal Sean Hannon's thunder, but once we're able to switch over to that fiber optic network, we'll start saving some costs there as well with Comcast. I think that, there's a couple more. Veterans, so that one's front loaded as well. We pay the assessment to the veterans group, veteran system that we're in with Northampton and some other smaller communities. We pay that at the beginning of the year. But the other piece there is we are starting to see an uptick in benefit payments to veterans. It was on the trending down for many years, and now it's starting to trend back up. And this is one that we have increased FY24 budget because we saw that trend coming. And then the last one, I believe, was outdoor pool operations is higher. The pool operations, sort of the expenses come in two waves. Pool operations. First one in the summer and early fall, which is where the majority of the costs are to pay for lifeguards and supplies for the pool. We will see a little bit in June as the pool opens up, but this one should be close to budget. It might be slightly over, but it should be close. And I think that's it. And if there's any other departments anybody has questions on.
I guess the questions that I had is one on the sewer enterprise fund.
Mhm.
Are we in a position where we're now needing to second guess whether we made the right decision about the rate that we established for the year ahead, and we have enough reserves in that account to cover any overages?
Do you mean do you think we wished it was higher?
Yeah.
I think we'll be okay. Again, some of the issues we think will start to mitigate themselves in the coming year. Again, electricity sort of peaked and they're starting to trend back down, but we sort of saw an unusually high electricity this past winter, and so that piece will certainly help in the coming year. The sludge removal, again, that's one that's specific to sewer. That was peaked again recently when gasoline got really expensive. That's also come back down. So it always is sort of at the mercy of what's going on with gasoline and natural gas and how that impacts electricity and sludge removal. Those are sort of the two big variables for this fund. But no, I think when we did the budget for next year, we projected conservatively, we put increases in for sludge, we put increases in for electricity, and the rate that we proposed supported those increases. So we're okay with the rate at this time.
I guess I had one more question, and I'll see if anybody else has any. Is it too early to make any estimates about the amount of additional money that might be left over in free cash at the end of the year when we sign out of free cash, or is that
Holly, I think you calculated that number today, right? No, it's
yeah, don't wait too early.
Yeah, it's too early. Again, we should be fine on the revenue side. Expense side might not be as large as in past years. And so, yeah, we don't really want to put a number out there until we get a little bit more. Again, the process that Holly described is really critical to where we end, which is closing out existing purchase orders that department heads don't anticipate they're going to spend, and putting in the end of year ones for the final month to make sure everything's in. And so Holly and her staff right now are going through all the submissions that came in from department heads for their end of year expenses. They will enter them in. They're doing that now. And once those are entered in, then Holly and I can go in and see where every department's going to finish. We have to look at the enterprise funds and how they interrelate with the general fund. And so I would say probably a month from now, we'll have a good sense. Again, if there are any red flags or warning signs, we would let you know now. But probably a month from now, we'll have a much better sense of roughly what that will look like.
We still have more payroll to process this year as well. So although we have good estimates on what that's going to be, we need to make sure we get that last payroll processed as well so we can have better numbers.
And we're also, the other component that comes into our savings too is the schools. And so they have the same process as us where they have to close out their budget, figure out where their expenses are at, and then whatever the elementary schools have left over also comes back to us.
Lynn?
Unless people have more, I just want to compliment Holly and Sean on bringing us this great report. And, it's, I think Holly's first kind of flight without Sonia, but I know Sean's working with her closely, and you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We're just trying to carry on the legacy that Sonia has established, and if we make a mistake, she'll be the first one to call us and tell us that we made a mistake. So, so don't worry about it. But yeah, no, we appreciate that.
Are there other questions? Hey, so I can't think of anything else. We never did have anybody to go back to public comment on, and there's still nobody. So the minutes can show we thought about it. And I don't think that we have anything else to do today. And
Do we have any minutes we need to approve?
oh yes, thank you. Actually, that's a good point. Thank you. In the packet, there was a amended February 7th minutes that actually the amendments were pretty insubstantial. They were really typographical type errors. There was no substantive. I did look at the minutes for April 3rd and May 16, which are the other two that are listed. I have no suggestions whatsoever for amendments to either of those minutes. So I don't know if anybody else has any corrections that they would like to make on any of those 3 minutes. And if not, the motion I would be making is to approve the February 7, 2023 minutes as amended and the April 3 and May 16, 2023 minutes as presented.
Second,
Second,
take Anna.
thank you.
Okay, so motion on minutes has been made and seconded. Any further discussion or further amendments that people have for the minutes? If not, then I think Kathy has now left us so that she's now absent. I'm a yes. Alicia?
I am a yes, and I also have to leave now, but I'm
Yeah.
voting yes. Thank you.
Okay, well, we're just about to adjourn too. Thank you very much, Alicia. Anna?
Aye.
Lynn?
Aye.
And Bob?
Support.
Matt?
Support.
And Bernie's absent. So it is a 4 yes, one member now absent of the voting members, 2 resident members in support, and 1 resident member absent. So if there's any other business that was unanticipated that anybody else has, I have none. So I will declare the meeting adjourned, and thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the
Thanks.
long weekend.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.